Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing medicinal herbs that you can add to your homemade soup and bone broths. So I love to make everything by hand whenever I can, of course, time being allowed. And one of the things that we really like to enjoy, especially in the winter months, are homemade soups and stews. And because we raise our own chickens, I've got really excellent quality bones that I can use to make my own bone broth. Everything I'm showing you today can be adapted for vegetable broths, any of the bones that you have access to. So keep that in mind when you're working with all of these ingredients. I do want to caution you that the quality of your soup stock and bone broth is only going to be as good as the ingredients that you access. So make sure that if you are using bones, that you are accessing organic, pasture-raised, good quality animal bones, because soup stocks have a tendency to pull out all of the nutrients and minerals and vitamins that are in your vegetables and your meats, or your bones, pardon me. And because of that, you want to make sure that they haven't been exposed to a large amount of pesticides. So even though I'm using chicken bones, I still love to add a wide variety of vegetables whenever I can. And so I always add carrots. And this is a parsnip that we grew in our garden, and unfortunately I didn't store them properly, so they kind of got all sad and soft, but this makes them perfect for adding to my soup stocks. If you're making a vegetable broth of any kind, you're just going to want to use a larger amount of vegetables to compensate for the lack of bones. So one food group that often isn't identified as herbs are your allium family, which would be your garlic and your onions. These are foods that are also nourishing herbs and that add a huge amount of medicinal benefit. So I definitely encourage you to add your onions and your garlic. If you haven't seen my video on making fermented honey garlic, where I go into tons of medicinal information about garlic, I recommend that you check that out. The link will be up here. But in general, they're anti-inflammatory. They're loaded with tons of benefits that will help your immune system, your cardiovascular system. And so I definitely recommend adding lots and lots of onion and garlic. And because you will be disposing of the vegetables afterwards, if your food was grown organically, you don't even really have to peel it. And you don't have to chop them really small either. That's what's nice. And you can adapt this recipe for your slow cooker, if that's what you like to use to make your soup stocks and bone broths. I like to use my Instant Pot. Or you can do this on the stovetop. It doesn't really matter. So I've got my onions in, and now I'm going to add in my garlic. So like I mentioned, garlic's got some amazing medicinal benefits that support the cardiovascular system, as well as adding lots of minerals, nutrients, and anti-inflammatory properties. So I've added in all my veggies. I like to add a lot of garlic, so there's probably about 8 cloves in there, a whole onion, 2 carrots, and a parsnip. Like I said, if you're going to be making vegetable broth, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, then you're going to want to add a lot more veggies. So what we're going to move on to now are the medicinal herbs that I love to add to my soup stocks. In the summer months, when I have access to fresh herbs and fresh vegetables, I always choose that option as opposed to using dried. So for example, we like to really grow lovage, and that adds a really nice flavor. So I would add a whole pile of that. I would add fresh parsley instead of dried. You get the picture. So the first thing I want to mention is that if you're using high quality bones, you definitely want to add a little bit of your apple cider vinegar. That helps to pull the minerals out of your soup stock. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is stinging nettle, your Urtica dioica. I absolutely love nettle as a superfood. A lot of different websites and natural health practitioners promote all of these foods that don't really grow here, like goji berries and acai berries, as being superfoods. And nettles are things that farmers have been yanking out of their fields for decades, hating them. And they're one of the most nutrient-dense foods that we have. So I love to add a lot of stinging nettle. Like I said, if I have access to fresh, then I would always add fresh. So stinging nettle is loaded with lots of our main minerals that we need and vitamins like B vitamins, but it's also really high in all the trace minerals that we need, anything from selenium, magnesium, manganese, you name it. It's also pretty high in protein. So you really want to get to know stinging nettle as a superfood. So like I said, if I have access to fresh, I'll, obviously wearing gloves, will chop up a bunch and tuck it in there. I'm not much for measurements. I did about 2 heaping tablespoons of my stinging nettle. Another one that you really want to add is parsley. If you have access to fresh parsley, then I recommend that. We've got about 6 or 7 inches of snow outside, so no fresh parsley for us. So I'll probably add another good 2 heaping tablespoons. Parsley is really high in vitamin K, vitamin C, I'm going to add a little bit more, folate, and your A vitamins. So you really want to be friends with parsley. The next one I like to add is turmeric. And I very rarely have access to fresh turmeric root, so I'm usually using powdered. Turmeric is one of our best anti-inflammatories and antioxidants that we have on the planet. It is, however, not really very bioavailable. So it's important that when you're adding your turmeric, that you also add in your black pepper. Black pepper increases the bioavailability of turmeric drastically. Plus, black pepper tastes delicious in soup stock anyway. As you can see, I'm not much into measuring. It drives my husband crazy. A pinch of this, a dash of that. In the winter months, I really like adding some immunomodulating, not immuno-boosting, but more of our adaptogenic type herbs, and astragalus would be one of them. So I'll add a decent amount of astragalus root to this as well. In the spring months, I really like to add detoxifying herbs that help support the kidneys and the liver, things like dandelion root and burdock root. They're really, really tasty, and they add a richness to your broth too. Other herbs you'd like to add would be things like rosemary and thyme. These are, first of all, delicious, but they're also broad spectrum antimicrobials, so good to add in the winter months. They're going to add flavor, but they're also going to give your immune system a much needed boost. And again, as you can see, I'm not much into measuring. And the last thing I'm going to be adding in today's stock is kelp. I really like to add kelp because it's really high in bioavailable iodine. We only add a little bit, but if you have anyone in your family that has issues with iodine, maybe they have thyroid issues, kelp would be excellent. Other seaweeds would be really nice to add too if you have access to a good quality seaweed. Horseradish adds a really awesome kick and is another nutrient-dense root that you can add. And finally, if you have access to medicinal mushrooms, things like reishi, ethically harvested chaga, you can add those to your soup stocks as well. So I have all of my herbs, my bones and veggies ready. I just need to add some water and put it into the Instant Pot. I like to keep mine under high pressure for at least 2 hours. I know the recipe books say that it can be done as quickly as 30 minutes, but I really like to let them sit in there for a long time. And like I mentioned, this can be done on the stovetop or it can be done with a slow cooker. Whatever your method of making soup stocks and bone broths is, just go with that and add in your medicinal veggies, or medicinal herbs, I should say. If you like written instructions, check out below. I'll have a link to a blog post I did about this a few years back. Plus, this recipe and a bunch others are in my new book. There's a link to how to purchase that below as well. I want to thank you so very much for taking some time out of your day to watch this video. I hope you found it informative, and I hope this allows you to explore the world of medicinal herbs in your food. We're actually going to be making 2 batches of this and canning it, pressure canning it tomorrow. So stay tuned for that future video where I will show you how to safely pressure can your soup stocks. And until next time, this is Correne from Spirea Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.